On January 27th, Idaho House Republicans passed a resolution calling for the U.S. Supreme Court to reconsider and overrule Obergefell v. Hodges, the landmark 2015 case that made gay marriage the law of the land in this country. I did not find this particularly surprising. The GOP has been, for as long as I've been aware of politics, the party of homophobia. For that entire time, there have also been gay conservatives, some of whom insist that the party is totally not homophobic now, and some of whom talk about improving the party. Before the transphobic group LGB without the T and the homophobic grifters over at Gays Against Groomers, there were the log cabin Republicans. If they exist to either 1, remove the image that the GOP is homophobic, or 2, make the GOP not homophobic, they have failed. 1. Tree rings. The log cabin started, as so many things do, with the legendary pie-eating contest champion Anita Bryant. For a dive into the history of Anita Bryant and the gay rights movement, I suggest the ContraPoints video, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. Anita's campaign against gay rights started after Dade County passed a non-discrimination ordinance covering sexuality. If there's one thing Christian avatars of love despise in this country, it's being told that they can't discriminate against minority groups. It's so sad, you guys. Don't you know that the words written in red say that the love of Jesus Christ is only effectively spread through demonizing minorities? Jesus was a carpenter dom surrounded by his submissive followers and who ended up getting nailed to death. His tale is the tale of a fertility god. Sounds pretty gay to me. Shout out to the Unsung History podcast, which helped lay out the history of the log cabin and which I used a lot for this section. Speaking of gay, in the backlash to gay rights that Anita Bryant helped spark across this country, a dude named Briggs in California thought the state should ban us gays from education. The thinking, as Anita Bryant claimed as well, is that homosexuality is a sort of social contagion where we grown gays turn kids gay, who then in turn grow and turn kids gay. When I was in middle school and reading news stories about gay marriage getting passed in various states, I know I'm so old. Critical conservatives in the comments claim to still believe this conspiracy theory. They declared all of us were abused as children. You know, for a while I tried to figure out who it was in my life who had done something so horrible to me. Thankfully, no one had. Those lying assholes were simply making up conspiracies because that's what that kind of person does. Facts don't matter, their feelings are all that matters. To oppose the Briggs Initiative, gay Republicans organized throughout the state of California. Some of the groups were endorsed by the party, others were not. One that wasn't had to change their name from the Lincoln Republicans to the Log Cabin Club. Harvey Milk supported these gay Republican organizations. One other magic connection later, their efforts would get the attention of Ronald Reagan, who would come out against the Briggs Initiative. They didn't disband once Briggs got defeated, though, and they spread throughout the country. By the 90s, the Log Cabin Republicans were born as a national conservative organization. According to Dr. Neil Young, the Log Cabin name calls back to their original Lincoln Republican name, obviously. And this name was chosen because originally these gay conservatives were correctly painting the gay rights movement as a movement of civil rights. Their argument was that they represented the actual ideals of Lincoln. I do wonder if any of the founders had themselves a little giggle about Lincoln's historical queerness and the fondness with which other men wrote about his thighs. At the time, apparently, I wasn't alive because despite being so old, I'm so youthful. Democrats weren't that much better on gay rights than Republicans were, so the Log Cabin saw an avenue to make the GOP the party of gay civil rights. Going great, fellas. Really, achieving untold success there. The history of the Log Cabin claims on its website details the hope they felt going into 2001 with Bush, because if there is one thing that we gays love, it's a little Bush. He hired gay people. He didn't defund AIDS programs. From the here and now, those seem like incredibly small steps, but they were definitely steps. We have to keep in mind how relatively quickly and far gay acceptance rose in the United States. Unfortunately, Lawrence v. Texas was ruled in 2003. You aren't often going to hear that sentence coming from a gay guy, Now, of course, Lawrence was decided correctly, and Scalia was a massive prick of the unfun kind, whose views on natural law were such thin disguises for open bigotry that, like, the fake costume mustaches they were pretending to be were as thin as Raja's Olivia Newton-John Waters look. The unfortunate bit comes from a whole bunch of social conservatives losing their minds at Lawrence getting correctly decided. This led to backlash. That led to Bush trying to keep his base by becoming more outwardly anti-gay. So the log cabin did not endorse him the second time around. Bush endorsed the federal marriage amendment, which would have added "we hate the gays" to the Constitution. In part due to the log cabin's lobbying, the FMA resoundingly lost. If you want an FMA that stays winning, you'll need Full Metal Alchemist. Because McCain opposed the FMA, they decided to endorse him despite everything else in 2008. McCain did not win that election, but hey, at least he introduced us to Sarah Palin, an act that would unfortunately lead us to the unseriousness that is the modern GOP. In 2010, the log cabin did something incredibly cool of them. They sued the US government to bring an end to Don't Ask, Don't Tell. For any toddlers out there who are even younger than me somehow, like how's that possible, and might not know, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was a policy wherein the government was not allowed to ask you or test you about whether or not you were gay, but if you were ever caught being or expressing some gayness, a little impressed, you'd get canned. LCR rightly saw this as bad and sued to end it. They won in the first trial. It was going up to the Ninth Circuit when Don't Ask, Don't Tell got repealed and the whole thing became pointless to continue litigating. Intriguing that Obama was talking about repealing the law while his government opposed this lawsuit. I'm sure it was a bit more complicated at the time, but with the great hindsight of history, I get to say DADT was a bad law, always was a bad law. The log cabin was right in this instance, and defending that law in court was a morally bad move by the Obama administration. But I guess the universe had to balance it out by having McCain be one of the key voices of opposition to overturning DADT, maybe as an attempt to tell the log cabin Republicans, hey, you shouldn't have endorsed this homophobic bigot. Of course, then they endorsed the homophobic bigot known as Mitt Romney in 2012. I think he's gotten better as he's aged since then. Their national version did not endorse Trump in 2016, though plenty of local groups did. Then, after an entire Trump administration where his government opposed LGBT non-discrimination, they endorsed him in 2020 and 2024. It seems as if whatever spine the log cabin once had, it has no longer. In 2023, they hired several ambassadors for their offshoot organization Outspoken. One of those ambassadors was homophobic provocateur Isabella Riley Moody, a woman who made liberal use of the F-slur and seemed to revel in the idea that a gay group was paying her to be a homophobic asshole. She would go on to appear on a podcast calling the log cabin gross and tweet out that she thinks a gay person existing outside of the closet is pedophilia in and of itself. After that, the log cabin quietly erased her from their websites. This was an entirely unforced error. It was clear that Moody was a homophobe and would continue being a homophobe. Why on earth would an LGBT rights organization hire her and then appear taken aback by her continuing to be who she was and saying the horrible things that she had always said? Still though, as much as I vehemently disagree with gay conservatives and conservatives of most stripes on most things, I do have a sort of admiration for the log cabin's history. Take the Texas chapter, for instance. In 1998, they protested the state GOP convention after a state elected compared them to the KKK. Richard Tafel gave a speech pleading with his fellow conservatives to stop throwing hate upon them. Someone threw a sign at his face. It takes courage to stand up to such hatred. Historically, the log cabin Republicans have stood against homophobia from the GOP time after time, year after year, all the while being smeared and attacked with vicious homophobia from people claiming to be loving Christian conservatives. But they kept going, and they kept doing it. Alas, two major questions remain for us. Who are they today, and have they succeeded in making the Republican Party into something other than the party of homophobia? Yo! Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do a little share if you feel like it. Join me over on Patreon. You get these early, you get some vlog content, you get some looks at my art stuff. We can just do a little chatty chat. Be nice to each other in the comments. I will actively delete you if you're just being mean and an asshole to anyone. I have some poetry collections out on Amazon, including Butterfly Snuff and a Museum of Art and Eggs. I'm really proud of them, so please go check those out. They're also anywhere that you get your ebooks. Tune in next time. Best of luck with whatever you're doing in life, and no matter who you are, regardless of whether or not I would vehemently disagree with you, your politics, and the way that you treat other people, and no matter what you think about me, my politics, the ways that I speak, the ways that I look, and you have that. I do sincerely hope that life is kind to you, and that you receive so much love that any anger or annoyance you're feeling at the moment seems so pointless. Because you just got all these good things going on for you. Have a good one. 2. Morning Woodhouse. Let's talk about the log cabin Republicans in the contemporary age. Let's start with their current leadership, which is based off of their website as of time of writing, though they did release a statement about their current president stepping down. First, we've got our chairman of the board, Daniel E. Ennis. Daniel has a husband, but you would not know that if you were looking at his campaign website. Mentions his kids, though. Maybe he got divorced and the log cabin never updated their site. Maybe. I mean, his Twitter calls himself the vice chair, but their website labels him the chairman. On his Twitter, he is against hate crime legislation and apparently for Florida's Don't Say Gay bill, a homophobic censorship law that you would think a leader of an historic LGBT rights group would be opposed to. Republicans like to pretend that the bill wasn't homophobic. I have a long-ass video addressing it. Long story short, I read the bill. I read analyses of the bill. I read statements of one of the sponsors of the bill. I read the responses of DeSantis' then press secretary accusing any critics of the bill of being groomers. Safe to say, Republicans calling it non-homophobic are lying. They lie a lot. And Ennis should know better. The log cabin should know better. Their vice chair is Jill Homan, who appears to be insanely bad at Twitter. You know, I can relate to that. I suck at social media. Homan works for American First Policy Institute, which I previously talked about in my video discussing Linda McMahon. To briefly sum up what I discussed there, AFPI peddles the homophobic lie that gay households are worse for children. The evidence does not agree with that. They think it's perfectly fine for LGBT kids to be placed in the homes of religious homophobes and transphobes whose beliefs will harm those same children, and they think that to stand in the way of that harm is bad, actually. They think the LGBT rights movement is sexualizing kids. They think we stole the rainbow from Christians. They oppose the Respect for Marriage Act. Now, why would a woman work for both an LGBT rights organization and an org that thinks LGBT rights are evil? I wonder. Homan also co-wrote an op-ed for the log cabin endorsing Trump, but we'll get to that endorsement a bit later. As of time of recording, despite stepping down, Charles Moran remains the president of the LCR while they search for his replacement. Charlie Boy is another one of those gay conservatives who thinks everyone else is a moron, and if he just shouts about how Don't Say Gay wasn't homophobic, actually, none of us would go and do any research and look and be like, oh wait, it was homophobic. You know, but apparently fighting Republican homophobia is a bit too scary for the group founded to fight Republican homophobia. He published an op-ed in Newsweek calling for LGBT Americans not to vote for Harris, citing her opposition to Don't Say Gay, and seemingly being opposed entirely to the T part of the LGBT. Not once in that article does he say trans. It's always gender identity, with scare quotes, or gender ideology. That's interesting, coming from the president of a group that made clear its opposition to Trump's first ban on trans people in the military, and who continues to use the entire acronym. Log Cabin isn't doing the LGB without the T nonsense on their website. It's even more interesting because in 2023, he seemed to believe that 16 was a reasonable age to transition, a compromise we could reach, and that the Don't Say Gay bill was fine if it stopped at 6th grade. DeSantis, of course, expanded Don't Say Gay, and it was homophobic from the beginning. It now seems like Charles might think it's bad to be trans at any age. I get the feeling that he'd join in on a conservative pile-on if someone suggested 16 as a compromise these days. But, playing defense for anti-LGBT positions is something he's well acquainted with, claiming Mike Pence never felt positively about gay conversion therapy. Only, both 2000 and 2007, he seemed to endorse and believe in conversion therapy. That isn't to mention his support for Don't Ask, Don't Tell in opposition to gay marriage. Why was the president of the log cabin running defense for a lifelong, virulent homophobe? According to their bio on him, COO Ed Williams got the Nevada GOP to drop its opposition to gay marriage, or at least he was working for them when they did. LCR doesn't credit him per se for this, but it is heavily implied that he was behind this, or at least heavily involved. That's cool. Good for him. See, this isn't me simply being partisan. I will give compliments when compliments are deserved. For instance, one of their founding members is still on the board, Frank Ricciazzi. And from one gay Italian to another, you helped do some good and genuinely cool shit throughout history, Mr. Ricciazzi. Skylar Akins, bless his heart, is the sort of person upset that he had to take courses in college that didn't directly translate to his career. That has nothing to do with queer politics, but it is very dumb to complain about. He just doesn't understand what education is and lets a bit of resentment guide him. Shocking. In a podcast appearance for Coffee Table Talks, Akins implies it's fine, actually, for states to have civil unions instead of gay marriage because I guess he doesn't understand the concept of separate but equal not being equal. Maybe that was in one of the classes not pertinent to his job, so he didn't pay attention. He implies that Antonin Scalia helped bring about marriage equality, so, maybe just political history wasn't in any course that he liked. Scalia, a dissenter in Obergefell, Windsor, and Lawrence v. Texas. I'm sorry, Skylar, but Scalia was not an LGBT ally, and he played no part in advancing our rights. You simply do not know what you were talking about. Having someone who thinks Antonin Scalia, who voted in favor of sodomy bans, had a positive impact on LGBT rights, work for your LGBT rights org does not say good things. He flatly says the Republicans do not represent trans Americans, which is at odds with the log cabin statements. And he said that as like they shouldn't represent them. Hey guys, maybe he was a bad hire. Maybe if you do care about trans people, like your website claims, despite your president's remarks, you shouldn't hire someone who is that transphobic. Let's move on from their leadership. They opposed the Equality Act, instead preferring the Fairness for All Act. One of the co-sponsors of the bill, Mike Simpson, specifically made clear that it allows for small businesses to discriminate against LGBT people. Great job, Log Cabin, on endorsing a bill that would give a right to discriminate against us. Doing great. Thankfully, they are for the global decriminalization of LGBT status. Yes, Skylar. They include the T with Tati. They also call for sanctions against anyone who does criminalize in any way being LGB or T. Good for them. That is an important step the world must take. They are for gay adoption rights. Great. They say government-funded programs should not be allowed to discriminate. Amazing. So, why do you support the Fairness for All Act, which the ACLU says specifically allows for government-funded anti-gay discrimination? They are also anti-conversion therapy and are for banning it for all minors with the usual wishy-washy statement about how adults can make bad decisions if they want, but it's bad no matter who partakes in it. And yeah, they're right. It's bad no matter who partakes in it, but I can understand being like, adults can fuck up their lives if they choose to, I guess. Don't agree, but I understand. They should fight for this position they supposedly have. It's an excellent use of their time. Conversion therapy remains legal for children in many parts of this country. That is incredibly shameful for us, and it must change. Another good thing, they want to fight HIV and AIDS. Good on you. They like PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, and want it to be widely available. They like subsidies for HIV and AIDS treatment. Cool. They say they like Trump supporting initiatives to end HIV. At 2025, there's a bit of irony to that, isn't there? We'll get to it. Actually, no, let's get to it now. In 2020 and 2024, they endorsed Trump for president. I have an essay going over a video of Trump laying out his policy plan for education during the 2024 election. Plan implies gay families are lesser than straight families. He calls for a Don't Say Trans bill with an implied support for a national Don't Say Gay bill. Remember the log cabin's opposition to conversion therapy? The two judges who struck down a conversion therapy ban in the 11th Circuit? Yeah, Donald Trump appointed them. I have seen no statements from the log cabins suggesting their endorsement came with the promise that Trump would not appoint any more defenders of conversion therapy to the judiciary. On January 20th of 2025, on his first day in office, President Trump signed an executive order called Reevaluating and Realigning United States Foreign Aid. This put a pause on congressionally mandated spending for foreign aid programs because Donald Trump immediately decided to abuse the powers of the presidency and ignore the Constitution. On the 24th, further guidance was issued that put a stop to all programs already paid for and underway. You know what that means? A temporary end to PEPFAR, aka the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. On the 1st of February, realizing they had fucked up, they issued a waiver allowing some of PEPFAR's programs to resume. So African men, women, and children who relied on our assistance to help control their HIV and or AIDS eventually got to start taking their medicine again. That's great because stopping antiretrovirals will kill you. It can make you contagious once more, and if you don't start back up in time, can lead to the disease becoming resistant to medication. A competent White House would not have risked that in the first place. The executive order was either lazy and incompetent or evil with the hope that no one would care. One of the most important inventions in the fight against HIV is a drug commonly called PrEP. According to KFF, formerly known as the Kaiser Family Foundation, the waiver issued allowed for PrEP programs to continue, but only for pregnant or breastfeeding women. So, because of Trump's actions, there will be an increase in HIV and AIDS infections. The log cabin Republicans released no official statements about this. I checked their Twitter page. They made no comments on it whatsoever. Cowardly. Disappointing. Disqualifying. Disgusting. They similarly never released a full statement on a Texas judge ruling that requirements to fund PrEP violate religious freedom restoration acts because the plaintiff said PrEP would promote homosexuality. How do you go from having the courage to sue, to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell, to lacking the balls to say anything about that decision or the legal battles surrounding its sense? Despite their seeming dislike of trans people, the LCR released a statement praising the ruling in Bostock v. Clayton County, the SCOTUS case that bars employment discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. They would like for Congress to explicitly add those two categories to the text of the Civil Rights Act. But until then, they think Bostock is good. And yes, it is good. They praise Gorsuch for it. Good, he deserved praise for it. But they praise him specifically as a Trump nominee, the implication being that this ruling came because of Trump. That's how they wrote their statement. LCR has been consistent in refusing to criticize the Trump administration for anti-LGBT actions, except for that trans military ban. Who was president when Bostock was argued? Trump. Guess what side the federal government sent someone in to argue for? The pro-discrimination side. Now, why didn't that get a condemnation from the log cabin? Trump wasn't the only person to get their endorsement or praise. They claim Pam Bondi is an LGBT ally. That's interesting. I have a video over Bondi. I wouldn't call someone who thinks trans people are recruiting kids because being trans is apparently a grooming disease you can catch, or that being trans is a choice. I wouldn't call that person an ally. When she was Attorney General of Florida, she argued that allowing gay marriage would harm everyday Floridians. They didn't call call Pete Hegseth an ally because they aren't complete morons. Bondi at least once talked about how employment discrimination is bad. They congratulated Hegseth, though, and once retweeted a photo of him meant to make him look good or muscular or masculine or something. I have a video on Hegseth. Hegseth opposes having trans people in the military. That was the one thing the LCR got onto Trump about. They did not oppose his nomination or make any statements concerned that he would implement the policy he advocated for. Hegseth also has a history of defending homophobic laws and hoping no one will read those laws and realize that yes, they are actually homophobic. In the early 2000s, the magazine he was in charge of was busy saying that homosexuality is immoral. Hegseth is, and always has been, a homophobe and a transphobe. If the log cabin cared about fighting homophobia and transphobia in the Republican Party, as they once did, they would have opposed his nomination. I did not find statements from them opposing any of Trump's nominees. That would include Kristi Noem, who, after the overturn of Roe v. Wade, made it clear she thinks Obergefell should be overturned so states can allow or ban gay marriage as they see fit. Perhaps because their vice chair also works for American First Policy Institute, they raised no concerns about Linda McMahon's ties to that very same homophobic think tank, which it bears repeating has articles arguing for anti-LGBT discrimination. They praised RFK Jr., a man who has claimed kids are getting transed via herbicides and who doesn't believe HIV is the cause of AIDS, instead blaming it on gay men's addiction to poppers, because RFK is an idiot conspiracy theorist who also happens to be a major homophobe and transphobe. Let's look at their endorsed candidates for 2024. Surely none of them were anti-LGBT. They wanted Kari Lake to become senator for Arizona. Lake doesn't like drag queens, the pride flag, or non-discrimination laws. Rather than just dumping the tea like many conservative allies have, she also suggested dumping the B. Log Cabin doesn't call itself an LG organization because LG is a phone brand. They are an LGBT rights organization. They use the LGBT acronym. Why did they endorse a woman who despises half of our community? What message is that to bisexual conservatives? Not to mention, she entirely rejects trans people and claims kids are transed by their teachers as some sort of evil social contagion. Anita Bryant would be pleased. Hung Kao, who unsuccessfully ran for Virginia Senate, believed in forcibly outing trans students to their parents and seemed to lump transness in with abortion as extreme evils he only ever ran into when he interrogated a bomb maker in the Middle East. Oh, trans people are basically terrorists. So, that's great. They endorsed Eric Hofday in his unsuccessful challenge against Tammy Baldwin. Hofday has a history of opposing gay marriage. He thinks trans people have high rates of suicide because he thinks being trans is a mental illness and that mental illness causes that. He constantly misgenders trans people and makes it clear he doesn't think being trans is a real thing. As the race was ending, he claimed that he and Trump were defending the traditional family. That's normally used to mean straight marriage only, and given his history of opposing gay marriage, that's on the money for him. Given that he claimed Baldwin, a lesbian, is attacking the family, sort of seems like the Log Cabin endorsed an open homophobe and transphobe. Alex Balakian is another one who thinks you should be forced to out trans kids without their permission. Young Kim is an opponent of gay marriage who voted against the Respect for Marriage Act. She supposedly thinks being LGBT is a choice. She opposed efforts to allow gay men to donate blood. Kim is a homophobe and a transphobe. The Log Cabin endorsed her anyway. Michelle Steele joined Kim in voting against the Respect for Marriage Act. She also voted against the Equality Act. She ran partially on opposing gay marriage in 2020. Daniel Issa seemingly used a gay Republican's sexuality as an attack in a campaign ad in 2020. Ashley Henson is another one who seemingly supports forcing schools to out trans kids to their parents. Mike LePetri doesn't believe in trans identity. Elise Stefanik supports neither the Equality Act or the Log Cabin's Preferred Freedom for All Act. She had previously supported both, but when conservative queerphobes got angry at her about that, she changed her tune. To quote Susan Collins, "I am concerned." The log cabin doesn't seem to be, though. She doesn't like trans people. She's for don't say gay, and she suggested a bill to allow federal agencies to discriminate against LGBT people. Claudia Tenney thinks LGBT inclusion in school lessons is the sexualization of children. Is that true? Nope. Is it Anita Bryant-style homophobia? Yup. Did they endorse her anyway? She also believes drag is inherently sexual. Is it? No. Stephanie Bice is another person who supports the censorship of drag because she claims it's inherently sexual and inappropriate. Nancy Mace used to support social transition for children if they wanted to do that. Mace's descent into an ever-deepening anti-trans obsession has been more recent, so I can't say the log cabin was necessarily aware that she would be this bad when they endorsed her. But after she repeatedly used an anti-trans slur in Congress, you might have expected a group that claims to be a pro-LGBT rights organization would call her out. The log cabin, though, had nothing to say about her use of transphobic slurs. My guess is that's because conservatives got more focused on trans rights this past election, and so the log cabin realized they'd have to actually be brave to stand up for trans people, and they spent all their bravery points years and years ago. They're cowards now. Then there's Mark Coaster, who tweeted he was against trans ideology, grooming, and men and women sports. So, he's a transphobic bigot. It seems if the log cabin was a house built in Lincoln's image to stand tall for LGBT rights in the Conservative Party, then it currently is a victim of arson. 3. Fires in Widsman. So the log cabin isn't doing too great at the whole bravely standing up for LGBT rights within the conservative landscape thing. But have they managed to make the GOP the party of gay rights? Yes, I get it. The idea is very funny, and they obviously haven't. But have they made it the party of not homophobia and not transphobia? That's also funny. On January 27, 2025, Idaho Republicans passed a resolution calling for the Supreme Court to overturn gay marriage. It's what we started this video off on. The log cabin issued no statements about this. The only source I could find on the log cabin Republicans responding to Project 2025 is their president, Moran, dismissing it as unserious. One would expect, however, a conservative LGBT rights organization to actually put out a statement making clear that their vision for conservative politics is better than the Heritage Foundation's. I have a very long video going over the contents of Project 2025's mandate for leadership and another going over its sponsors, but in case you want the quick and dirty, which is not my preferred way to spend a night, it calls for the criminalization of trans people and all media that mentions them. It seems they view social transition as child abuse. They think being trans is denying your very humanity. They want trans people banned from the military. They say straight families are the only healthy ones. They oppose Bostock. Anti-discrimination is apparently sexualizing children. They imply gay marriage is invalid. Given that they removed for titillation from the definition of pornography, and how many conservatives, including ones that the log cabins has endorsed, view acknowledging LGBT people as sexualization, it's not hard to imagine that if they get what they want, they'll go after all gay content in existence as well. No condemnation from the log cabin. Alliance Defending Freedom is a homophobic hate group that's influential in conservative politics. They attempted to bring a case to the Supreme Court called Tingley v. Ferguson that alleged conversion therapy bans violate the First Amendment. SCOTUS denied to hear the case, keeping in place the Ninth Circuit ruling that the ADF can go fuck off with their pro-torture nonsense. You would expect the log cabin to have issued some sort of statement or to have filed a brief with the court at any point. They did not. Speaker Mike Johnson is a homophobe who once worked for conversion therapists. The log cabin did not mention this when they congratulated him on securing the speakership. I guess this is a soft redo of my video about Republican homophobia because I'm about to talk about the state platforms. I'm not going to go over all of the senators and governors and everything I did in that video, but as with last time, some of these guys don't have their own platforms. Assumedly, they default to the national platform. So if I don't mention a state, it's because they had nothing to mention, or they're one of the very few that isn't overtly homophobic. Alabama is against gay marriage. Alaska is against gay marriage and non-discrimination laws. Arizona thinks there's no such thing as being trans and that materials encouraging homosexual marriages are obscene and must be banned because they don't understand and don't like the First Amendment. Arkansas is against gay marriage. California thinks gay families are worse for kids and they're against gay marriage. Georgia is anti-gay marriage. Hawaii is anti-gay marriage and pro-allowing conversion therapy, with the implication that parents should be allowed to force their minor children to be put through the torture. Idaho would like to ban the academic study of queer theory and other such things in universities because they hate the First Amendment. They're also anti-gay marriage, so a boy potato shouldn't be allowed to marry another boy potato. They want it to be illegal to trans the kids, so they probably like Project 2025. Illinois wants a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. Indiana thinks straight families are better, but you can read their platform as saying gay families are okay, maybe, just like not as good. That is still homophobia. Iowa is anti-non-discrimination laws. They think teaching about LGBT people and status is sexual indoctrination because they think being LGBT is a choice and a social contagion. They don't think being trans is real and they want to get rid of gay marriage. Kansas is anti-gay marriage. Maine wants to ban minors from knowing anything about trans people while also forcing schools to out trans kids. They don't like gay marriage. Minnesota wants to censor gay people out of schools. They're against gay marriage. Mississippi, the most drag queen sounding state, is against gay marriage. Missouri, is Uri closer to a name than is Zippy? Regardless, they also don't want gay marriage. Montana is against gay marriage. Nebraska doesn't think being trans is real. They oppose Obergefell because they want the states to own marriage, and also they want their state to ban gay marriage. New Hampshire is anti-gay marriage. New Mexico is against gay marriage. North Carolina is against gay marriage. They think trans people aren't real. They want to censor any government entity or funded organization from mentioning LGBT people to kids. They think religious people should get to discriminate against anyone they want to discriminate against. North Dakota wants us to encourage straight marriage, but doesn't outright declare opposition to gay marriage. They do think being trans is made up, though. Oklahoma is against gay marriage. They want to ban drag shows and pride parades. They want to ban gender-affirming therapy. They are opposed to non-discrimination laws. They want to ban any non-negative portrayals of LGBT people in schools and children's books. They want to ban universities from studying or talking about gender transition. They want to bring Don't Ask, Don't Tell back. Oregon doesn't think being trans is real. They're against gay marriage. They think transition is sexual exploitation somehow. They think it's bad to not place trans kids with transphobic foster parents. They want religious people to get a free pass to discriminate against anyone they would like to. South Carolina is against gay marriage. They want people to be free to discriminate against LGBT parents in adoption. They think the existence of trans people is a threat to children. South Dakota defaults to the national platform like many other states, but they send you to the 2020 platform, which is the 2016 national platform. I have to assume that this was an act of intentional malice rather than complete incompetence. It would be so mean of me to assume they're just stupid. So that means they're against gay marriage and support conversion therapy. The Texas GOP continues to call homosexuality abnormal. They want no one under the age of 26 to be so much as allowed to change their pronouns because they aren't merely anti-trans, they are anti-First Amendment. They actively say they are okay with conversion therapy and implicitly pretend like it works. It does not. They want to ban any mention of trans people to kids. They want to ban drag around kids, and they endorse Don't Say Gay censorship. They think gay people shouldn't be allowed to be parents. They want a trans military ban. Washington thinks religious people should get to discriminate if they really think that God told them to. They oppose LGBT non-discrimination laws. They want to censor trans people from education. West Virginia doesn't think being trans is a thing and wants to ban transition for everyone. They oppose gay marriage and they think gay people shouldn't be parents. Finally, Wyoming is against gay marriage. They think being trans is fake and they think gay parents are worse than straight parents. 27 state GOP platforms continue to call for the end of gay marriage in 2025. Most of those were updated between 2022 and 2024. Guess whose national branch has made no comment on these anti-LGBT platforms? That's right. The Log Cabin Republicans claim the GOP is now the party of the sensible gays. Apparently, the sensible gays want to lose the right to marriage, and a chunk of them are okay with conversion torture. Now, obviously, the Log Cabin isn't going to agree with Republicans who support conversion therapy, yet they don't make a fuss about it anymore. They don't make a fuss about anything, really, besides the Democrats. It's as if they have given up on their mission to make the GOP the party of LGBT rights. Instead, they have decided their only hope is trying to make it seem like the Democrats are worse. The Log Cabin was actually once upon a time the avatar of the ideals of Lincoln, at least in some way. It attempted to bridge a massive divide, an ugly wound. It shot out in bravery against the Briggs Initiative. It stood against governments who attempted to close gay venues during the height of the AIDS epidemic. They protested conservative events and politicians that were homophobic. They opposed anti-LGBT Republicans. They sued the government to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. They called out Trump for his trans-military ban the first time around. I did not know any of those things before researching for this project, and I think they are commendable. I think those moments are brave. I think the Log Cabin has a necessary, important, great spot in gay history. I am by no means a conservative, but I believe in the Log Cabin's mission. It would be a better world and a better country if there was not a major political party in the United States that is actively antagonistic towards LGBT people and our rights. When I started work on this video, I thought I would just be making fun of them, but instead, I'm filled with a sort of empty sadness. The Log Cabin Republicans have abandoned their mission. And though I would have readily argued with them and disagreed over their conservative beliefs, I think we are worse off for LCR losing its bravery. Lincoln received comments about his silky thighs. In a metaphorical way, you could say the Log Cabin has decided to be the thighs for the Republican Party. They moved the needle a bit, and now they claim that everything is fine. But really, they're still getting fucked.